ladies and gentlemen. People don't fall in love with you, at least not in the way you imagine. They fall in love with the image you cast, the reflection their own soul detects in you. There are only two forces at work beneath the illusion we call love. The first is projection. The second is resonance. When they meet someone who carries the fragrance of these forgotten parts, they pour those longings onto that person. You become a canvas for their unconscious. They do not see you, they see what they have been missing in themselves. A man sees in a woman his lost anima, his inner feminine. A woman sees in a man her idealized animus, the masculine strength or sensitivity denied to her. What we call love at first sight is often the psyche recognizing itself in disguise. People fall in love with the image, not the individual. This image is not crafted consciously. Rather, it emerges from subtle cues, fragments of personality, gestures, expressions, and emotional tones that evoke something deep within the observer. People do not fall in love with the totality of a person because such totality is invisible at first glance and often remains concealed even in long relationships. What they fall in love with is the version of you that matches their inner world, their longings, their unmet needs, or their fantasies. It is not the complexity of your soul that captivates them. It is the simplicity of the role you play in their psyche. You become a symbol, a representation, a character within a story they have been writing long before you arrived. Your essence becomes blurred, overtaken by what they need to see. You are loved, not as a person, but as a vessel for their projection. The more closely you align with this imagined figure, the more love you receive. The moment you deviate, confusion or disappointment follows. This is why early stages of romantic affection feel magical. The image is still intact, and both parties are immersed in the illusion that they have finally found someone who truly understands them. But it is not understanding that holds them. It is recognition of a familiar narrative. Your voice might remind them of a caretaker. Your eyes might reflect a wound they have carried silently. Your confidence might evoke the protection they've longed for. None of this is about you as a conscious, evolving human being. It is about their inner world being validated and mirrored. In this dynamic, love becomes conditional, dependent on how well you preserve the image they've fallen in love with. Many people sense this distortion intuitively, but can't articulate it. They feel they are loved for being a mood, an energy, or a fantasy, but not for their truth. So they perform, they adjust, they become what is expected. In doing so, they slowly lose themselves. The fear of being unloved is often the fear of being truly seen, because being truly seen may not align with the image that first drew others in. This process is subtle, almost imperceptible, but it shapes the foundation of countless relationships. The person believes they are falling in love with you, but they are in love with a constructed version of you that lives in their mind. This version might carry your face, your voice, and your smile, but its soul is theirs. In time, if the relationship persists, the tension between the real self and the imagined self begins to rise. Either the person must come to terms with the truth of who you are, or the illusion must be maintained through suppression, compromise, or emotional distance. Rarely do people choose to confront the discrepancy. More often they mourn the fading of a feeling, unaware that it wasn't love for you, it was love for the image. This image is fragile, brittle, under the weight of authenticity. Love often begins with unconscious projection. This psychological mechanism operates silently, without our awareness, casting fragments of our inner world onto another person. When we meet someone new, especially someone who captivates our attention or stirs deep emotion, it is rarely because of who they truly are. It is because in them we recognize something from within ourselves, something hidden, something repressed, something longed for. This projection is not a flaw in our perception, but a natural function of the psyche attempting to restore its own balance. The qualities we admire, the traits we are drawn to, the beauty we see in the other, often reflect disowned or undeveloped parts of our own being. A person who seems confident and self-assured may evoke the strength we wish we had. Someone who feels warm and nurturing may stir a longing for the care we never received. What we fall in love with then is a reflection of our own psychic need. It is not the other person we see, it is ourselves in disguise. These projections can be powerful and enchanting. They feel like destiny, like recognition, like coming home. We believe we found a soulmate, someone who completes us. But what we are actually experiencing is the return of our own unlived life, presented to us in the form of another. The person becomes a screen upon which we project our most intense desires and unresolved emotional content. This is why early love can feel so intense and magical, because it is not based on reality, but on fantasy. It is the unconscious seeking wholeness through external attachment. We believe we are connecting, but in truth we are engaging with a mirror. And this mirror tells us a story about who we are, what we lack, and what we hope to become. The danger of projection is that it is unstable. Over time, as we begin to truly know the other person, the illusion starts to fade. We may feel confused, betrayed, or disappointed, not because the other person changed, but because they never were the figure we imagined them to be. The projection collapses under the weight of reality. What was once a source of joy and inspiration becomes a source of tension and conflict. We blame the other person for failing to live up to our fantasy, but the truth is that we place an impossible burden upon them. They were never meant to carry the weight of our unconscious. And so the relationship either breaks under the strain or must undergo a deep transformation. If we can withdraw the projection and begin to see the person as they are, rather than who we want them to be, then love can become real. But this requires a shift from fantasy to truth, from illusion to understanding. Until then, we continue to fall in love not with people, but with the unrecognized contents of our own psyche, believing we are seeing them, when we are really only seeing ourselves reflected back in their presence. Resonance feels like connection, but it's often shared wounding. When two people meet and instantly feel drawn to one another, there is frequently an unseen thread binding them beneath the surface of conversation, attraction, or chemistry. This thread is not merely affinity or shared values. It is often mutual pain, unresolved trauma, or parallel emotional patterns echoing between them. The human psyche recognizes what is familiar, even if that familiarity is rooted in suffering. A person may feel inexplicably safe around another, not because they are healed, but because their energy matches an emotional pattern that is already deeply embedded. This creates a sense of immediate intimacy, a false but powerful impression that we have found someone who understands us completely. In reality, we have found someone who suffers in a similar way. It is not always visible on the outside. One person's trauma may manifest through withdrawal, another's through over-attachment. One might seem confident while the other is anxious. But beneath these differences lies a common core, an emotional signature that resonates. The wounds align, the patterns synchronize. It might be abandonment, unworthiness, fear of rejection, or a deep hunger for validation. Whatever it is, it acts like a frequency, drawing in others who vibrate in similar ways. This is why people often find themselves repeating relational cycles with different partners. It is not that they are choosing wrong, but that they are unconsciously pulled toward what is familiar. Familiarity feels like home, even when it hurts. Resonance disguises itself as connection, because the body remembers what the mind tries to forget. The nervous system reacts to familiarity with a sense of safety, even if the situation is unsafe. The heart opens, not necessarily because it is loved, but because it recognizes the echo of its own pain. And the mind interprets this reaction as love, as fate, as deep compatibility. But what is actually happening is a reactivation of old emotional wounds, re-experienced in the presence of another who shares them. This dynamic can create a powerful bond, but it is not inherently healthy or sustainable. Two people who connect through unresolved wounds may find themselves stuck in a loop of emotional triggering where each unintentionally reopens the other's scars. This can breed codependency, emotional confusion, and cycles of rupture and repair that feel intense but lack real healing. What is needed is awareness. Sometimes the strongest connections are signals of something that needs to be healed rather than something that should be pursued. It takes courage to look beyond the allure of resonance and ask what part of us is responding. Is it our wholeness or our wounding? Is this connection expanding us or repeating a pattern? Until that awareness emerges, we remain susceptible to relationships that feel destined but are actually driven by unresolved pain seeking recognition through the other. Most relationships are built on mirrors, not mutual awareness. At the beginning of a connection, people often believe they are falling in love with another person, but more often than not, they are falling in love with the reflection of themselves they see in that person. This mirroring effect happens unconsciously, where each individual projects their inner world onto the other and sees qualities, values, or emotions that resonate with their own identity, wounds, or desires. The relationship becomes a space not of mutual understanding, but of mutual reflection, where each person is looking at a version of themselves rather than truly seeing the other. This phenomenon can create a strong sense of closeness, as people feel understood and validated. But the foundation is built on self-referencing illusions rather than genuine discovery of the other's being. In these mirrored relationships, the other becomes a surface upon which our own image is cast. If we are insecure, we seek reassurance not because we trust the other, but because their reactions validate our need to feel worthy. Hey, if we are lonely, we interpret any attention as love, not because the person truly connects with our essence, but because their presence soothes our emptiness. The relationship becomes less about two people meeting as they are, and more about each person using the other as a tool to stabilize or reinforce their own sense of self. This dynamic can feel deeply affirming at first, because it creates a temporary harmony. But harmony based on mirroring is inherently fragile. When one person begins to change, grow, or reveal parts of themselves that contradict the image the other has projected, dissonance appears. The mirror breaks. And what is revealed underneath is often not what was expected. The disappointment is not only in the other person, but in the shattering of the idealized version that was once so comforting. Most people do not fall in love with another person, they fall in love with the feeling of being reflected, seen, or mirrored in a way that makes them feel whole. The actual individual standing in front of them is often secondary. Mutual awareness, in contrast, requires a different level of maturity. It involves the willingness to truly observe and receive the other person as they are, without distortion, expectation, or unconscious need. It means noticing when the mirror effect is happening and consciously stepping back to ask whether the connection is based on real knowing or just emotional projection. In many cases, when the mirror fades, so does the relationship, because it was never rooted in reality to begin with. The more two people can see each other beyond the reflective surface, beyond the roles, the projections, the patterns, the more likely their bond is to survive the inevitable unraveling of illusion. But this requires deep inner work, the courage to withdraw our projections, and the humility to recognize how easily we confuse being seen with being reflected. The illusion of being seen is rarely the truth. Most people move through relationships believing they are known and understood, but what they are experiencing is often a filtered perception shaped by projection, desire, or emotional convenience. To be truly seen is not just about having someone look at you or listen to your words. It is about having someone perceive your essence without distortion, to witness your depth without molding them into something more comfortable or familiar. Yet, the human psyche is rarely equipped to offer this level of perception. What usually happens instead is a subtle editing process, where the other person registers only the parts of you that fit within their framework. They notice your kindness, but overlook your anger. They admire your strength, but ignore your vulnerability. They praise your intelligence, but disregard your confusion. In doing so, they build a version of you that suits their inner narrative, not the complex, evolving reality of who you are. This version becomes the you they love, support, or argue with. And you, sensing the approval or affection it brings, may begin to reinforce it. You laugh when it's expected. You hide your sadness when it doesn't fit the image. You adjust your truth to remain visible in their eyes. Slowly, unconsciously, you become a character in someone else's story. The more this continues, the more you feel disconnected from yourself, even as you are praised or loved. A subtle loneliness sets in, not because you are alone, but because you are unseen. The tragedy is not just in being misunderstood, but in being misunderstood while thinking you are known. Many relationships function this way, built not on truth, but on partial recognition. The illusion of being seen can feel warm and comforting, especially when it meets our need for validation. But it becomes a trap when we begin to confuse recognition with resonance, when we start to believe that someone's idea of us is who we actually are. This is why moments of true authenticity often feel risky, when you show a part of yourself that falls outside the other person's image of you. Your fears, your shadows, your complexity. You may fear that their affection will vanish. Sometimes it does, because their attachment was never to your wholeness, but to the mask you wore. True seeing is rare because it requires presence, openness, and the capacity to hold contradiction. It means allowing the other person to be inconsistent, to grow, to reveal parts that challenge your comfort. It demands that we let go of control, stop editing the other into something manageable, and instead sit with the discomfort of their full humanity. Until this happens, we remain locked in the illusion, interacting not as souls meeting in truth, but as images dancing with images, each person hoping to be known through a fog of misunderstanding and mutual projection. True love requires the courage to reveal your real self. In a world where image often matters more than authenticity, the act of showing who you truly are becomes an act of profound vulnerability. People are conditioned from early life to present versions of themselves that are acceptable, likable, safe. They learn to mask their fears, suppress their needs, and silence their complexities in order to belong. This habit extends into relationships, where the longing to be loved can override the deeper need to be known. In this dynamic, people often offer a curated self, a version shaped by anticipation and the hope of acceptance. But real connection cannot form through illusion. Love that is based on a mask is not love for the person, but for the performance. The tragedy lies in being praised for traits you do not possess, comforted for wounds you do not feel, and wanted for a personality that is not fully yours. You may find yourself surrounded by affection, yet feel a hollow space within, a quiet dissonance that whispers of the parts you've hidden. These hidden parts may be your doubts, your shame, your contradictions, things you've been taught to believe make you unworthy. But true love is not born in perfection. It is born in presence. It emerges not when you are ideal, but when you are honest. To be truly loved, you must first be truly seen. And to be truly seen, you must allow yourself to be revealed. This revelation is not loud or dramatic. It often begins in small, trembling ways. In moments when you admit your fear instead of pretending confidence. When you speak your truth instead of agreeing to avoid conflict. When you show your sadness rather than offering a smile you do not feel. These acts of self-exposure require courage because they carry risk. The risk of rejection, the risk of being misunderstood, the risk of losing the fragile connection that the mask once secured. But without this risk, love remains shallow, conditional, and insecure. The fear of being too much or not enough will always haunt love that has not touched the real self. Many people avoid this kind of exposure, convincing themselves that it's better to be accepted for half of who they are than to be rejected for all of it. But this avoidance comes at a price. Over time, it breeds resentment, emptiness, and a sense of emotional exile. You may remain in a relationship, yet feel invisible within it. You may receive love, yet question if that love would survive your truth. The path to true love is not paved with constant harmony or effortless connection. It is marked by moments of uncertainty, emotional rawness, and deep self-revelation. It demands a willingness to be seen in your most unguarded form, to expose not only your light, but your shadow, and to trust that love, if it is real, will not only endure this exposure, but be strengthened by it.